Hello everyone. So in the past few videos we have been talking a lot about HTML, and we said that we will add the formatting, coloring, different types of fonts, etc. into a separate sheet which we call as CSS or a cascading style sheet. So in this video what we'll do is we'll explore some very basic stuff as to what does a CSS stand for, and how can you start creating a basic CSS document. So just to give you a high level overview, I'm going to open up a web page, and it's called CSS Zen Garden, and this is basically just a website which has a lot of HTML and has a lot of CSS which you can play around with. So this is just basic markup, and what they have done is they have just added a style sheet to this to kind of introduce these formatting, these green color, the font changing, and so on and so forth. So let me just go ahead and download the HTML file, and let's just call this as index.html, and I'm also going to download the CSS file. Okay, now let's see how it looks like. Documents. Okay, now if I open index.html, it's just basic HTML, right? I mean, it's just some basic text without any formatting at all, and this is what we have been doing, right? It has a couple of header tags. All this is in body, there is a link, and so on and so forth. So if you just look at the source, this is just basic stuff that we did, right? We introduced divs, we introduced paragraphs. It's just a couple of tags, and they have pushed in some content for it. Now let's go ahead and apply that CSS which we had downloaded. So the way we do it is we have to introduce the CSS link. So let me actually open this in Notepad++. Okay, so this basically says that you are kind of introducing an external document, and that's a style sheet. So you're mentioning the type as text/CSS, and then you give the path to your CSS file. In my case, it's the same folder, so I'm not giving any complete path. So likewise, if you want to add an external JavaScript file, it's the same way. You say text/JavaScript and so on and so forth. So in the coming videos, we'll also have a look at how to kind of add an external JavaScript file. So now once we have added this, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. So you see that it took that CSS file, it took whatever we have kind of defined in that CSS, and it applied that to this particular HTML. So applying CSS or making a CSS document is not that tough. What you basically do is you start defining your formatting for each and every tag. Like for example, let's take this one. So for example, if your HTML file has a body, has an h1 tag and a paragraph, you say that whatever goes inside the body tag should have a background color red. Whatever goes inside the h1 tag should have a color as orange and should be center aligned. So there are specific rules that you can specify for this one. So this basically says that anything that goes between paragraph tags should have a font that is Arial and a font size of 20 pixels. So now your common question would be, what if I have multiple h1 tags, right? And I don't want all the h1 tags to be colored as orange. So what do I do? So there are ways to actually selectively apply formatting. We can introduce concept of classes, IDs, and so on and so forth. We will cover those in the coming videos as well. So let's just go ahead and create a very simple HTML document, and let's start applying these rules one by one so that you can have a look at how the CSS interacts with your HTML document and how effectively you can control the overall design and formatting of your HTML document without having to bother about these types of syntaxes in your HTML itself. So let me go ahead and create a new HTML document, and I'm going to say this is HTML, and head. I'm going to say title, introduction to CSS. Okay, and I'm going to introduce a body tag. I'm going to say body slash, sorry, to end this body tag, and I'm going to say introduction to CSS. Okay, let's save this and execute this. Basic stuff, we just added a body tag and some text to it. Now let's go ahead and create a CSS document, and let's just introduce the background color as red. So you say that whatever goes inside my body tag should have a background color as red. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to call this as intro css.css. Cool. So I have introduced a CSS file, I've introduced an HTML file. What I need to do is I need to say that that particular HTML file should use my defined CSS file, intro css.css. Once that is done, it'll start taking in whatever formatting or color you have specified. Probably I didn't choose a very good color, but anyways, you get the idea. Now let's go ahead and have a look at something else. Let's introduce a paragraph tag, and I'll write here HTML/CSS, and let's introduce an h1 tag. This is an HTML header. Cool. So we do have a couple of tags now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few formatting to these tags. So I'm saying my h1 should have a color orange, it should be center aligned, my paragraph should have a font family as Arial, font size is 20 pixels. So these are all predefined keywords. I am going to go ahead and remove this because it doesn't look good. All right, so this CSS has been defined. I'm going to refresh my page. Oops. Okay, so we saw that it's now orange colored, center aligned, whatever rules we have defined over here. So this is how you kind of combine a CSS document with an HTML document. What we have seen here is a super simple one. We will look at how to selectively add formatting and how to play around with layouts and so on and so forth. There are a lot of things you can really do with CSS. You can actually have inheritance and so on and so forth. We will slowly try to build a website in stages. So once we have looked at a couple of elements in CSS and a couple of elements in HTML, we can kind of build a full-fledged start to build a full-fledged website. We will have a look at how to make a menu, how to kind of float your entire layout and so on and so forth. But this should give you a pretty good idea to start with.